When I was growing up, my mom used to worry that I wouldn't be able to do all the things I needed to do. But I just learned to do things with my feet that other kids did with their hands. I learned to drink from a glass, color with crayons, unwrap birthday presents just like everybody else. I started taking Taekwondo when I was 10. 4 years later, I was the first person without arms to get a black belt in the American Taekwondo Association. Some people are afraid of the water or saying they can't do something. But it's not about that, it's just going out there and saying, how can I accomplish it, as opposed to, can I accomplish it?
Our next guest is living proof that you can accomplish anything. Please welcome Jessica Cox. And it's one thing to do karate and play piano, but you decide, I'm going to learn how to fly. What made you do that?
On the elementary playground, I remember on the swings, envisioning myself being Superwoman, and I could fly over the playground, and I was everyone's hero, and one at a time I would take a person up and share my superpower. And it wasn't until years later that I was able to fulfill that dream of being Superwoman. Everything was a challenge. The basic challenge of learning how to put on my headset, learning how to buckle my seatbelt, and probably the greatest challenge was learning to land the plane safely. But I think the greater the challenge, the greater appreciation you have when you've accomplished it. I always say that I don't think I'd ever want to do anything to prove myself to anyone. If I did anything, it was either to prove it to myself or because of the enjoyment of it, but not to prove to anyone else that I could do it. I live my life saying that, this is me. I'm not a victim of anything, and, I can do whatever I want to do. My mom told me that I could do whatever I want to do. Thank you, Dave, and the AOPA whole team for making it possible for me to share the story, and a special highlight of a wonderful family here in the front row, and you'll hear a little bit more as to why they're special. But I want to thank some people here who made it possible for us to travel the journey of 2,000 miles in an Ercoupe, a 1946 Ercoupe airplane that cruises at 90 miles per hour. So just to clarify for all of you how long that took 2 weeks to the day that we finally arrived in the state of Wisconsin, losing brakes in El Paso, losing radios somewhere before we landed in Wisconsin. But we're here and we're happy to share the Jessie Cab. And if you want to check her out, she's at the Vintage Red Barn. So she's right in the center in the spotlight, and she is a beautiful little checkered yellow, white, and black airplane. She's called a Jessie Cab because she looks like a taxi cab. But thanks to Lindsay Lakaitis, who's here with a Labradoodle in back. Lindsay, wave. She jumped on board to make it possible to get the Ercoupe here. Thanks to Patrick. Where's Patrick? My husband. He's somewhere here behind the scenes. You see a hand. He is probably one of the newest pilots. I know there are even newer pilots here, but he only had about 70 hours of flight time, got his PPL, and decided to take the journey to alternate with Lindsay Legs on bringing the Ercoupe across all the states to get it here. So give him a round of applause for becoming a pilot. And I know many of you know my story already. You've seen it in the publication, you've heard it maybe on the radio this week, or at some point know a little bit about me and the Ercoupe. Well, let me give you a little expedited version of my story just in case some of you may not know the details. I know many of you are friends, so some of you do know. But when I started out flying, there were a lot of questions. And we are going to make do with all the wonderful noise. And just bear with me, because I will actually stop when we hear the airplanes. And when I start to... Okay. Well, yeah, we all love airplanes, don't we? We all love airplanes, so we have that in common today. So I have to say this is definitely challenging, but for me, I've spoken in all sorts of situations, and I love the sound of airplanes. So we'll all just have to listen, and I will stop speaking when they come and make too much noise so that you all can hear me. But I started out training with many questions. How would the Federal Aviation Administration handle my challenge? How would they respond to my training? And how would an instructor teach someone to fly without arms? How would you fly a plane without arms? Just imagine for a moment. Well, you'd use your feet. And the reason I go to my feet is because I've chosen in life not to use prosthetic limbs. And I wore them for 11 years. They looked like Captain Hook arms. They weighed about 10 pounds, but I gave those up and decided to start training without. So on that first day of flight training, we were faced with a number of challenges. How am I going to put on my headset? Well, I brought my headset here with you as a nice visual of how that was done. So 2 broken headsets later, I was able to finally grab a hold of that between my toes, make sure the mic was out of the way, and make sure to get this on just like this. And I finally got that third headset on without breaking it. So that was the first challenge. But that next challenge, can you still hear me? Okay, the next challenge was not as easy as the first. The next challenge, bear with me as I put my mic behind my ear. Here we go. That next challenge was a lot more complicated. You see, the next challenge was how to buckle myself into a 4-point safety harness. And sitting there in that airplane on that day, I remember looking down and catching a glimpse of my shoes on the floor in the airplane. So as I struggled putting on the 4-point safety harness, I caught a glimpse of those shoes, and they represented something important: how I address challenges in life. And that's exactly why I have my husband's shoe right here in front of me, so you all can see how it is that I learned how to tie my own shoelaces. So unlike everyone else in my kindergarten class, I took both feet out of the shoe, took the laces between my toes, and 1 bunny ear, or 2, I chose to use 1 bunny ear, over, through, and pull to tighten. And I tied my shoes after a couple hundred tries and finally figured out not only how to tie my shoes, but how to think outside the shoe. How to think outside the shoe. Going back to that 4-point safety harness, I stood up in the pilot in command seat, just like this, and I buckled that lap belt in place after weaving it through that right shoulder strap, that left shoulder strap, and then loosened up the left shoulder strap, loosened up the right shoulder strap, loosened the lap belt, and slid my body inside the harness. Then I was able to pull the strap over the left shoulder and tighten that, strap over the right shoulder, tighten that, pull my lap belt snugly in place. 45 minutes later, my flight instructor got in and he was impressed. He asked me, "How did you do it?" And I told him I was thinking outside the shoe. So think outside the shoe. It's something we can all do in finding a way, because I know everyone has challenges. And sometimes we have to be creative to come up with solutions, which we all know it takes a lot more time, it takes persistence, it takes courage, but we all can do it. So thinking outside the shoes would help me get through all my training. And we're gonna, okay. The next thing I would love to share with all of you, after this is quieter, okay, no worries at all. Of course, we are at an air show. So 3 airplanes, 3 different flight instructors, and 3 states of training later, I finally got to my solo flight. And it was unlike any other solo flight. It was not like any other solo flight. We all remember our solo flights. And my instructor turned to me and said, now you can fly the airplane on your own. And it was unforgettable. But what has been so incredible is how we've been able to use aviation to inspire anyone with a disability. And we're gonna show you this wonderful video that I have to share with you of flying Senator Harkin, the former senator of Iowa, on a flight. And we'll go ahead and play that. Play the video.
Roger. Full power. We'll pull back about 65. Okay, ready for takeoff.
Wow, nice. Very smooth.
Thank you.
Very smooth. Wow. You should be an instructor.
Thank you.
And we cut.
Okay, keep her coming down here.
Nice. That's perfect, Jessica. Perfect alignment. Wow. Now you keep your airspeed at 80?
Yeah, 80. We like to come in at 80. It's a good speed to be at. Keep it dropping at 80. A little slow, so let's just add a little. We won't pull the power back until I'm after this road. I'm after this road right here. So let's go ahead and wait till a little bit more, and then we'll pull the power.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
You're good to go.
Level out. Come on.
Good.
Oh, there you go.
Whoa, grease it on, grease it.
I had to give you a good one.
Wow. With all the cameras rolling, that was fantastic.
Ah, that was
Wow.
wonderful.
Talk about greasing it on.
I had to give you a good one. Celebrating
Great.
30 years of the ADA.
Wow. That was... Talk about performing for the
Frederick
cameras.
Tower, Super Cub 363 Juliet Mike, holding short on 23, ready.
Okay, and that was flying Senator Harkin for the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we now celebrate the 31st anniversary this summer, which is incredible because we wanted to do this special trip of flying the Ercoupe all the way out here, and we put on the side of the airplane, "Believe you can fly." And that's what we hope everyone who sees the plane, it can represent a symbol of what is possible, that anyone can fly. Now we have good news to share with all of you. What we are all about, this air venture, is also the launch of a brand new project called Project 2025. We are working to build a custom airplane. And the custom airplane will have controls on the floor. Wow, this is great. Thank you all for bearing with us here as we work in this situation of an air show right above. So the custom control airplane will be an RV-10, built to be flown with feet. And we are starting this project literally in a year's time, hopefully. There is a back order on some of the kit airplanes, so it will take a year before we get the first kit. And then we will start to build this with different custom controls that will be used for me in the left PIC seat, and the right seat will have the same controls for anyone else to fly. So the goal will be to build this plane from scratch with all these different prototypes, and we encourage anyone who has ideas about how we can do this to share with us what it is that you think is going to make this possible, because we are starting from basically just ideas and making it possible to retrofit an airplane to be flown with feet. Now, if any of you have questions at any point, again, we will do the best with the sound effects around to answer your questions about how we can design this airplane. But we are all very excited, and we're excited about how this plane will work to open the eyes of everyone that disability doesn't mean inability, that people with disabilities they can create their own and design their own airplanes. And who knows what that can do for many people. So we're excited about this next chapter. It is going to take 2,000 hours to build a kit, but that's without the custom controls. So it's going to take more time to do the customization of these controls to make this airplane so that it can be flown in the left PIC seat, pilot and command seat, with feet. And it will require going the private pilot route because it will be an experimental, which means that I will have to acquire a medical. Now, I didn't have to do a medical in a light sport with a light sport certificate because my driver's license acts as my medical. But the hope is that we go the path, and I just received encouraging words just a few minutes ago, thanks to Dave for the introduction, that it looks as though, as long as I can do what's called a statement of demonstrated ability, a SOTA, we can pursue we can pursue the private pilot route, and it will be a little bit more work to do the SOTA, but as long as I prove that it can be flown, I can fly safely, then there wouldn't be a reason that I couldn't get a private pilot's license. So that's the next chapter, and it's an exciting one that we encourage you to follow us on social media. If you want to go to jessicacox.com/project2025, we have a whole website about the project. We're accepting designs of the customizations, and we are also, asking for support because it is an expensive project. We're estimating it's going to cost $300,000 to build this plane, and of course, we are looking for support for our 501c3 to make that possible. But I wanted to open it up for any of you who have questions about my flying. Feel free to raise your hand or foot and let me know if you have questions. Yes, we have a question up here, and I'm going to repeat the question so everyone can hear.
You stated that it took you did your license in 3 states?
It took 3 states, yes, to get my sport pilot certificate, yes.
The reason for that was?
The reason for that is the logistics of the Ercoupe airplane. If you look very closely at the vintage red barn where the Ercoupe is in the little, in the center, in stage center, you will see that it is the only airplane without rudder pedals. And because of that design, it allows me to keep my feet on the controls, my right foot on the yoke, left foot on the throttle. But the throttle had to be low enough on the control panel for me to be able to reach with my left foot. So every Ercoupe has a differing throttle. So because of the different throttle, we had a challenge locating the perfect setup for me. And the other Ercoupes in 2 other states didn't quite have it exactly set up for my comfort of reaching the throttle. So that is a great question. I have to thank my instructor, my final instructor who took me through solo, through check ride. That's Parrish Treyweek out of San Manuel, Arizona. So he was a great instructor. Any other questions? No questions about the new build? Yes, go ahead.
What was your biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge about flying was the landing. And one of the things that we did so that I could land safely is my instructor, Parrish, allowed me to land at a faster speed than other student pilots that he signed off. And the reason being, with a higher speed, it allowed more room for error. So we were lucky. I think I felt fortunate to have a great instructor, and he knew a way to make sure that I was safe. And he said, you're allowed to have a little faster landing speed. So that was the hardest part, though, was figuring out, making sure everything was in order for landing. There's a lot going on. Great question. That was the biggest challenge. Another question in the back. Yes. Why the RV-10 instead of other airplanes? Well, the RV-10, first of all, Van's aircraft is being very encouraging. We've had conversations with them. The RV-10 has the room for 4 seats so that we can do more as far as bringing things with us when we travel to continue to bring the message. On the way here, we had a special stop at Camp Nubbability, which is a camp for children who are born without limbs or who have lost their limbs. And we stopped there at Pinckneyville Airport and brought all the kids out to the airport to see the airplane. And they all got excited, and we were excited to, and I would love to eventually fly people in the airplane. So the RV-10 can fit 3 other people aside from myself. So that's another possibility. So we picked the RV-10 for various reasons, but it is more, I don't know if you've stopped at the RV booth, at the Vans booth, but there is a wonderful RV-10 out at Vans, if you check it out. But we did fall in love with that particular plane. Any other questions? Yes, Now the Coupe, it has a single foot brake. So I step on the brake with my left foot, but I have to then release the throttle. So I immediately, the moment I've touched down, I take my foot from that throttle and bring it over to the brake. So that is exactly how that works. Some Coupes have a hand brake. So for many people who've lost legs or don't have use of their legs, the Coupe is the perfect plane for them. That's a great question. Any other questions about the planes? Yes?
Do you use your teeth at any time?
That is a question I've never received before. Do I ever use my teeth? Well, I guess I could use it for the future of flying, but flying the RV-10 once it's custom built, but I've never thought of using my teeth for flying. But I hear your tongue is the strongest muscle in the whole body, so that's a possibility. Thank you for that question. I've never had that before. Other questions? Yes. I'm sorry, I may have to ask you to repeat that question. With other organizations? Oh, with veterans or handicapped military organizations. I've had the privilege to be invited to go to Walter Reed, where many of the veterans who have become amputees were brought to Walter Reed. And while I was there, the first quadruple amputee was taken in as a patient. So I have visited many veteran hospitals and spoken to many veterans. Again, it is very different to be born without limbs than to have lost limbs. So I have to make sure that I make that very clear, because for me, this is all I've ever known. It's very natural. But for others who've lost limbs, they have their own challenges they have to get through. And that's dealing with grief and loss as well, when you lose a part of your body that you previously had. So, but I really am appreciative of veterans, and I have had my opportunities to speak to them. Thank you for that question. Yes? Yeah, very good point. The RV-10 could be a possibility for other veterans. And just so that you all know, there is another young boy in the Midwest who was born without arms, and he's now 12. And by Project 2025's goal, which is 4 years, he will be of legal flying age. So it may benefit him as well. And that's the hope, is to help others and not just obviously myself. So to help, that's what the foundation, Right Footed Foundation International is. It serves people with disabilities by mentoring, advocating, inspiring, and educating. Any other? Do you want to? If you want to answer any questions too, Pat, you're welcome to come up here. So if anyone has any more questions about the design of the airplane, Patrick is very good at jumping in for questions about that, because we do have some prototypes that have been brought to us, and I always want to invite him to share the stage with me. Yes.
Well, I was going to ask, the air coupe has a different structural mechanism to operate. Is that going to be incorporated in the offer you any kind of support on ideas and design?
We are waiting on, we actually have had some amazing support from the engineers at Vans. And you mentioned about the air coupe and how it has ailerons and rudders interconnected. So that design could be replicated. And why don't we answer that question about
So one of the big things, I'm going to try and get my shoe back on here. One of the big things with this project is we don't want it to just be one airplane that's built for one pilot with one condition. We want to bring in all of the ideas, all of the concepts that people send us, all of their out-of-the-box thinking, and we want to have it available for the next pilot with a disability who wants to modify an RV, a Kit Fox, whatever experimental category that they enjoy. One of the challenges with just like, oh, well, let's link the rudder and the ailerons and, just go. You'll notice the air coupe sits really low. So its center of gravity is lower. The wheels have trailing link landing gear. There's actually a whole bunch of engineering that went into that just so they could connect the rudder and ailerons. And that's not impossible to port into an RV-10. It might be. It might not. We have to explore it some more. But we want ideas like that brought in, sent to us, so that we can then bring them back out. This is why we did this in this situation. This is why we didn't do this in this situation. Here's some other spin-off ideas if you're an arm amputee or, whatever. Mm-hmm. So we're going to explore as much as we can. The biggest ask we have on behalf of the aviation community is send us your ideas. A little blog post answer, that's great to inspire a thought, but can you send us maybe some sketches? Can you send us more information, some detailed thoughts, maybe a parts number for, hey, you need to use these servos. They're like awesome. We need all of those ideas, and we're going to try as much as we can. We've got a year to prototype before we start building anything. So we've got some time, and we need everybody's help with ideas just like that. So thank you for that.
Yes.
The Not Impossible Labs out of LA, because that's their thing. Their first project, Not Impossible Labs, was making 3D printed prosthetics for amputees in Somalia that could be printed on site in country using a 12-volt battery. That was another first. It's called Not Impossible Labs out of LA.
We have never heard of Not Impossible, so we will have to check them out. Not Impossible Labs. Okay, that's a great place to go then. Sounds like we can go check them out and see how we can maybe team up with them and see how they can design something.
Your project sounds right up their alley. So.
Yeah, great. That would be awesome. Other questions about the designs?
Back, Jess.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Are there any ideas that can be borrowed from the automobile industry? I don't know how your car is set up, or I imagine they probably have more experience with that than for us in the airplanes. So are they, as far as just the ergonomics of it,
Auto.
driving?
Well,
Take that.
you go ahead and take that idea.
Yeah, so one of the very first things we took from that is don't put the controls on the panel. Bring them down to the floor, a more neutral position so that she can have more endurance while flying. Mm-hmm. So, everything from the throttle, hopefully we can blend together. RV-10 is a constant speed prop, so, the propeller control, the mixture, get everything down lower, hopefully interlinked so the co-pilot can also, manipulate the controls, but get everything in a real neutral position so Jessica can fly for more than an hour or two before she just has to call it a day. But that's the first point right there. The other challenge with cars is a lot of them gone electronic. So they've got electronic steering, electronic throttle. And there's certainly some possibility of putting electronics in this airplane, but they have to be extremely robust and redundant, which might knock it out. We still have to explore and dig deeper and keep going to answer that entirely.
There is a foot steering device for designed by Drive Masters out of Texas. So that is, that was something that I immediately thought of when we first started this project. And the foot steering device moves parallel to the steering wheel and essentially is connected by the steering rod. So that was a possibility when I thought about it. So, but yeah, there's all these different ideas. It's great. Any other questions? And we do have a special family I want to acknowledge too before I forget.
In the back.
There's one question in the back? Yes. Barefoot or
Grippy socks.
I don't think I've heard of those socks, but I've heard of barefoot flying. So I think I do go barefoot all the time. Those little, I think you're thinking about the socks that have individual toes. Yeah, I have a couple pairs of those, but I actually prefer not to wear socks. But of course, if it's cold enough, I probably need to. I'm from Arizona, so I don't need to wear socks very often. I don't have very many in my drawer. But yeah, good question about that. And we have a family here. It has a daughter, Dafka, and Anne, and I'm sorry, your husband, Jim. They have brought their daughter who also uses her feet. So she's probably more privy to using socks because she's from Milwaukee. And it's a lot colder there than it is here where I'm from in Tucson, where we wear sandals and slip-on shoes. So thanks for coming. We appreciate you all being here. Yeah, so we have another question. Will we be building the RV ourselves, or how that?
Unless somebody wants to donate enough funds to go to a Build Assist program. Yeah, the plan is we've got some lead on some donation of equipment to do the build. There's still a few things we'll probably have to buy ourselves, but start in the garage, eventually move into a hangar, and finish the project in Tucson. That's the primary goal.
It is a really ambitious goal, I will say, but probably the most ambitious. But it did take 3 years to fly a plane, so this will be building a plane, and we're anticipating another, 3 years, 3 years to build a plane. Any other questions about the build? I do want to mention a cool little tool I have up here that I totally just forgot to mention. Thank you, Pat, for all the help with the questions. And this here is a windshield repairman's tool. And the reason I share this is because I think this is about thinking outside the shoe. And I think I want to conclude with the story of how this functions in my life. This tool is what was intended to remove cracked or broken windshields. But for me, this is my dressing tool. And this is exactly how I get my clothes on every day. I suction this on the wall, hang my clothes on that hook, step into my pants, and I wiggle my way in. And that is exactly what kind of mindset we are going to take with us as we build this airplane, about using resources, repurposing tools if we have to. Something may be out there already that may already exist that we can use for the build of this airplane. We may have to come up with a completely new idea. So we welcome your ideas, your thoughts, and any support. You could follow us again on jessicacox.com/Project 2025, and perhaps you'll be going up on a flight with me. So if you want to come up and say hello, I'm going to do foot fives, so it's a good way to greet you instead of a handshake. So feel free to hold your foot out. We'll do a foot bump, and feel free to come up and say hello and share with us your ideas. And thank you so much for really bearing with us in the situation of having the air show. But it's been a wonderful time to share this here at AirVenture as our time comes to a close. And we hope to see you in 4 years' time in 2025 with a brand new foot-controlled, first of its kind RV10. So thank you very much.